All right, good morning, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to the Tuesday, June 18th edition of the Mechanical Ventilation Plumbing Code tag. I'm Ben Omara, tag chair, and let's see, we still got a couple people filtering in, hopefully. And Justin, hello, morning. We might have.
Yeah, looks like we do have a quorum now.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and get things going. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be looking at reviewing more of the IMC significant changes and working through. Let's see if we can get to the end of the mechanical code to allow staff to move forward with the report, but we'll see how far we can get. So without that, anyone want to say anything before we move into reading the agenda? All right. So
Matt, do you want to do the roll call?
Yeah, let's do roll call. Thank you. So go ahead, Krista. Thank you.
Ben O'Meara.
Here.
Justin Borgo.
Here.
Steve Hart. Janice Goucher.
Here.
Ray Shipman. Laura Bloyd.
Here.
Shalise Desai. Ted Clifton.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Ian Casey declined. He had something else going on. Bill Masaki.
Here.
Steve Simpson. Brad McCutcheon.
Here.
Sandu Harpreet. Kevin
Here.
Duell. Oh, thank you. Kevin Duell. Allie Boris.
Here.
Jonathan Jones. David Price. It's 9.
So that is a quorum.
Sorry, I was trying to count.
Thank you. All right, great. Anyone else on the call that wants to introduce themselves or say hi? I don't see anyone else except for Dustin. So, all right, so let's move on and let's review the agenda. So it's on the screen here. And like I said, we'll take a quick look at the meeting minutes from past meetings and then get back into reviewing model code changes. So any discussion on the agenda as shown?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda as shown.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion or sound like it? All those in favor of approving the agenda as shown, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, next item, this is the Tuesday, May 28th meeting minutes. I don't know if there's anything on here. Everyone's reviewed this, that any comments or discussion on, or are we good to move to approve the minutes?
Move for approval.
All right, motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes. And then we have the May 31st edition. All right, similarly, any discussion here from anyone?
Move we approve the minutes of the May 31 meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, okay, to item 4 here. So, Krista, please remind us where we left off.
Okay, our last one was looking at the 505.7 and 505.8 on the new group I1 and I2 occupancy requirements for hoods, and that brings us to 506.2, where it adds and exhaust equipment exposed to outside atmosphere shall be protected against corrosion.
Okay, great. And then I guess before we get into it, I know Dustin, you're on the call, and we had the committee meeting last week to discuss a little bit on the timeline, but I don't know if you or Krista could reiterate kind of where we're falling now with kind of the report and moving forward in the process.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak on that a little bit.
Thanks.
So we're all the tags are not quite done with the reports, and so talking with the tag chairs and then asking the tag groups a question about our proposal periods. We are looking to open our proposal period here at the council meeting on Friday for a period of 90 days. That's going to be my ask of the council. And what that's going to do is be a little bit longer than our required proposal period of 60 days. It'll get the proposal period going and allow for people to continue to submit proposals after our reports are complete. So talking with the different tag chairs and staff about the reports, we're confident that we can have the reports finalized here by mid-July. In July, we're looking to schedule a special committee meeting, both the MVPE and the BFRW committees to approve the reports to the council. And then we're also looking to schedule another special council meeting in July to approve the reports as well. And so we're not looking, or at the council meeting, we'll be discussing what the plan will actually be, but I'm not looking to schedule the committee meeting or council meetings until we can be sure that we're done with the reports and get them approved, so that we're not pushing this schedule any further with those. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to take them at the moment if you like.
Great. Yeah, appreciate that, Dustin. And then, yeah, if anyone has any questions on what the process is going to be, and we're going to potentially have the review of the model code and existing amendment changes ongoing as the proposal period opens up.
And one other thing about the energy codes, I've gotten the question a couple times from some folks. We haven't begun that process for the energy codes because the codes aren't available through ICC just yet. So I guess the news on that one is stay tuned. We're expecting here in the next month or so to have that material to begin to work on that process as well.
Great. Anyone have any initial thoughts or comments or questions? And then, yeah, feel free to bring them up with myself or staff as needed. All right. Okay. And I see Jonathan, looks like you've joined now. Welcome. And with that, sorry, Krista, but please let's get back into it. Sorry for the quick tangent.
Okay, so the first one up is 506.2, and that adds the exhaust equipment to exposed to the outside atmosphere as one of the things that needs to be protected against corrosion.
I noticed there's a discrepancy in the number on the first line. It has 506.2, and then down under that on the correction line, it's showing 506.1.
Auto numbering strikes again.
Yeah. Thank you, Ted.
So I make a motion that we recommend adoption of this change.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second the
I'll
motion.
second.
All right. Laura got in there. Any discussion on this section from tag members or others? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption of model code change to section 506.2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 506.3 is another one of those changes where they changed duct serving type 1 hoods to grease duct and just kind of simplified the language.
And, okay, and I don't know if, obviously we don't have the review to look at making significant changes here, but it would be interesting to make sure that the requirements that were previously in 506.3 are still incorporated elsewhere. So it looks like they previously had a independent system requirement and maybe a couple other things incorporated here.
So is this, looking down to 506.3.2.5, the grease duct test, is this the same test that was required previously when they were calling it class 1 hood duct or whatever, hood ducts serving class 1 hoods or type 1 hoods? Is this the same test, or is there any additional requirements?
I believe it's the same test. Well, there's
Yeah.
2 different tests that are now allowed as well.
Correct. Yeah, I believe the pointers still directed you to this text section for type 1 hoods. And I think either previously or as part of the exhaust section, the type 1 hood requirement would direct you into a grease duct system as well, which would then require the testing.
So basically, this is a language issue that we're dealing with and getting it all on the same page. With that, I'll make the motion that we combine 506.3 with 506.3.2.5 and recommend approval of both of those sections.
Okay, there's a motion on the table for recommending adoption of model code changes to 506.3 and 506.3.2.5. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah. All right. So motion is second. Any discussion here? Like obviously the model code is kind of putting in some additional either clarifications or potentially allowances for both the light test and water spray test in the testing section. And yeah, I don't know if we don't need to get into it today, but might be something worth looking at in the future if there's parts of these requirements or if there's other aspects to discuss. But, all right. All right. If there, oh, good. Sorry.
Sorry, my brain is switching gears. Just a quick friendly reminder, type 1 hoods, would that service multifamily that's now being jacked into the commercial code?
Well, yeah, I mean, the type 1 hood requirement could be driven primarily by commercial cooking appliances. So
And type 2 is for the smaller ones over the range. I'm just looking for clarification this morning. I'm sorry, I'm a little off.
That's fine. And residential appliances, the requirements for those can also vary. Like your typical range hood in a dwelling unit would not be considered a type 2 hood or a type 1 hood.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's some other sections that will kind of define what type of hood you would need for different applications and different occupancies.
Yeah, no worries. The focus of my thought was, this is typically not testing done in the residential world. So I was just seeing if we were including a new form of testing on folks that wasn't there prior. That was all.
Correct.
I appreciate it.
Nope, understanding it. And yeah, if once we get through kind of the initial recommendations and if there is something that comes up as being potentially problematic or pushing undue cost on, I don't see an initial significant change for the cost requirements here, but we could definitely look at that as something to explore further. All right, any other discussion or topics for this? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending adoption for sections 506.3 and 506.3.2.5 model code changes?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, next is 506.5.1. And that just changes the reference from 762 to 705.
I move we recommend adoption of this change.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this? It's my understanding as well. It's an update to the UL listing for these types of fans. All right, hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption to section 506.5.1, please say aye.
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 All right, any
Aye.
opposed?
Okay, 505 or 506.5.2, the same change to the UL standard. And portions of item 4 were moved down to item 5 and broken out into individual subsections for clarity. So editorial more than anything.
I move we recommend adoption of these changes.
All right, motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion here? Definitely appears like it's mostly editorial, and then also similar with the fans updating the UL standard. All right, hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption to section 506, what is it, Krista? 506. You can scroll up a little bit. 5.2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 507 commercial kitchen hoods. This was reorganized fairly significantly. This is just kind of a cover over all the changes that we're going to look at here. And they basically broke it into general type 1 hoods, type 2 hoods, and then light duty appliances was all moved into the type 2 hood section. So 507.1. Had some language that was moved into 507.3. If a type 1 hood is installed in place of a type 2, all supporting systems must comply with type 1 hood requirements. And some new exceptions were added for wood burning ovens.
And then a couple for like different UL listed appliances.
Trying to fine tune my scrolling. Okay. So everything with the blue text is a change for the 2024.
Great. Okay. Any initial discussion here for section. I think there's probably more to unravel and align potentially with some of the allowances that we have for different cooking applications, especially with exception 6 here.
Yeah, I'm noticing that.
That exception 6 used to be in the type 2 section. And so it looks like they have now added that into the type 1 section, which I think is fine, but just something that, just a comment that looks like that exception existed before under the type 2 hood section. I think that was 507.3.
Mhm.
Right, and this is a general section rather than a type 1 section.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they kind of moved a lot of those exceptions up to this general section instead of burying them in the individual type 1, type 2 sections, which helps because then you're not going down the path of getting to type 2 and then finding the exception and having to go back through the process.
Yeah, I had to do the math on this and imagine a couple of kitchens, and having done so, I recommend approval of these changes to 507.1.
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion is second. Any further discussion? I know like the 0.7 CFM is the typical exhaust rate for a kitchen space as well. So that aligns, and that's kind of been the go-to. But any other thoughts before we're just moving to adopt or recommending adoption? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes to section 507.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 507.1.3, they've added some specific requirements for using draft hoods or atmospheric burners in the same space containing a type 1 or type 2 hood.
And it looks like, Chrissy, you had marked this as potentially significant.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of got there before, but now it has specific requirements. It just says provision shall be made, and now it's self-closing device in a sealed enclosure.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, it's a big change. It might not have any additional cost because it was pretty much a requirement. It just wasn't spelled out as specifically.
Mhm.
So I have a question about this. Wouldn't a gas range be considered an appliance with an atmospheric burner? This is just not making any sense to me.
Yeah, I'm also. This is.
I can understand why you wouldn't want an atmospheric gas water heater, for example, in the same area that you have especially a type 2 hood that isn't balanced. But I don't know. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how this would apply because it's a gas range, as we know them, has atmospheric burners. And yet they're the whole reason you would have the type 1 or type 2 hood.
Well, I guess you'd still need the hood for the products of either the cooking process, if the actual cooking materials giving off grease or smoke. So even for an electric cooking appliance.
This would seem to outlaw gas.
It looks to be separating them. Like if you'd have a kitchen using one that would be separated from the other, so you couldn't cause a CAS zone, is how I'm reading it, right? You wouldn't cause spillage into the other space. They want them separate.
But again, it's saying specifically appliances, which would include a range, equipped with draft hoods or atmospheric burners. So that was an or. So it would appear to prohibit the range, the gas range, from being located in the same room or space containing a type 1 or type 2 hood. Unless you take that range and seal it off in a different room without the hood, that's not why you have the hood.
I think when they mean
Back
atmospheric
to the drawing
burners,
board.
I'm thinking of like the old school gas appliances, like tanked and furnace equipment, where when it atmospheric means it vents on its own naturally with no fans.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't want a space that doesn't have a fan to make sure the bad goes out to be in a space that has a fan that pulls it a different direction.
I think that's what they intend, but that's not what they said. And therefore, I move that we recommend non-approval of this. They need to go back to the drawing board. It's not acceptable as written.
Just to clarify, I guess, yeah, like similar to what Jonathan said, like that was, I don't believe it's intended to apply to the cooking appliances, but more to like a water heater or like a boiler or something that might be in the same area as the type 1 or type 2 hoods.
And again, that might be what they intended, but it's not what they said.
Right? So I guess, and then Krista, I guess before we go through the motion, just to clarify what the scope of what we're doing here is my understanding is like we could recommend that we could, number one, signify that this would be a significant change and likely impose a higher cost or make it significantly change the code requirements from previously, as well as what Ted mentioned. But I don't know if we can indicate that we're like not adopting. Correct.
Yeah, the tag can certainly recommend that we not adopt the change, keep the 2021 language if they believe that it will cause a problem. I'm kind of referencing the whole prohibition of barbecues on balconies issue in the fire code, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The tag can recommend that we not adopt the change and retain the language as it appeared in the 2021 code. Or you can note that someone will be developing a code change proposal on the subject later and go with what's there for now. Or again, keep the 2021 language and let somebody come back with a proposal to fix the new language later. It's up to the tag how they
Got
want
it.
to move forward. But it's usually a wholesale keep or adopt the change or keep the old language, one or the other, and not try to go in and fix it at this point.
Got it. So we wouldn't necessarily need a code change proposal to retain the previous model code language. Is that
Correct.
correct? Got it. Okay. So sorry, Ted. I don't know if you want to modify your motion at all, but I'll leave it up to you, and then we'll
No,
close it.
I think as you have it noted in the kind of crosshatched area there, keeping the 2021 language would be my motion. That we recommend they keep the 2021 language because this is ambiguous at best and could be very confusing in the field for inspections and such.
Well, it does use the term atmospheric, which means if you're underneath a type 1 or type 2 hood, you're not an atmospheric type device. Again, this would only be stuff that's being non-vented purposely other than a pipe that's letting passive nature take care of itself.
But Jonathan, I think you're assuming a certain definition of atmospheric burners, but a burner on a stovetop is an atmospheric burner.
Yes, and if I agree with Ted, because if you read it, it can be moved into because they just use the broad term kitchen appliances or equipment. So where are they going to draw the line as to, it may cause confusion is that they'd have to redesign the entire kitchen and put atmospheric appliances or regular stovetops or other equipment in a separate room, which, I don't see. Maybe the larger kitchens could afford it, but a smaller restaurant and stuff, there's no way. So from an inspection point of view, I don't see, I would go with Ted to keep the old language, not, unless they can provide more clarity.
Right, so I guess before we go too far, like there's a motion on the table from Ted to retain the 2021 language or recommend that. Is there a second for that?
I second the motion.
Okay. All right. So now any other thoughts on this? If there's, maybe
My
various
final
things.
thought, if I might, is the old language actually specifies an outcome. And that's far better than an ambiguous language that seems to prevent things that are not intended.
Yeah, and then I guess Krista, do you have the IMC commentary available?
I actually just pulled that
Oh.
up.
I pulled up the 2021
Thank you.
IMC co-commentary under this section, and it so the looks like the 2024 IMC commentary. I don't see that posted on the I don't see that in the ICC webpage, but under the 2021 IMC, under this 507.1.3 fuel burning appliance section, it talks about it's talking about fuel burning appliances and specifically hood systems, exhaust fans, ventilation systems that can negatively affect appliance vents and chimneys. So, I mean, let's see here. Yeah, let's talk about water heaters too. So, maybe I'll just read this. It says a significant reduction in building pressure could be created by hood systems, exhaust fans, ventilation systems, and similar equipment which can negatively affect appliance vents and chimneys. Fuel burning appliances are often in competition with other mechanical equipment or systems for the available combustion air that infiltrates the building envelope or is otherwise introduced into a building, room, or space. The competition between powered exhaust equipment and natural draft fired appliances is an unfair contest. The powered equipment will starve the natural vent appliances unless provisions are made to compensate for the effect of the powered exhaust equipment. Natural draft appliances also compete amongst themselves for combustion air. The appliance that produces the strongest draft, such as solid fuel appliance, can cause combustion air shortages for the appliances that produce a weaker draft. Exhaust fans and similar equipment and appliances can produce significant negative building pressures that can interfere with the operation of vents and chimneys. This interference can cause reverse flow as outdoor air enters the building through vents and chimneys as a result of the pressure difference. Any such interference with vents or chimneys would cause discharge of combustion products into the building and therefore must be avoided. The amount of combustion air provided could be inadequate or nullified where there is no compensation for the effect of appliances or equipment removing air from a room or space. In many cases, the additional combustion air or makeup air must be supplied to offset the deficiency. For example, in restaurants, it is common to find fuel-fired appliances such as water heaters that are spilling combustion products into the kitchen area because of the negative pressure created by the kitchen exhaust fan. Direct vent appliances are a wise choice in commercial kitchens to avoid venting problems. So that's what the commentary of the old code says, but I definitely see the issue, you know, it is it definitely if for some reason we choose to adopt the changes, we definitely need to clarify what the intent is, because it doesn't look, I definitely see what Ted is bringing up here, so.
Yeah, looks like, Christy, you pulled up looks like this was as a change proposal at the model code level.
Right, this was
adopted.
the original proposal for the
Mhm.
2024 code. And it doesn't look like it had any public comments after the committee action.
Looks like the language is similar, but maybe a little bit. Actually, it looks the exact same. So it's here. Right. So I think the intent appears to be clear. And thank you, Laura, for going through the commentary section. But that's not what's written in the section as well. So, but yeah. So I would, yeah, I think definitely seems a little problematic and probably not great language as it is. But so motion and the second to recommend retaining the 2021 language, and obviously maybe we'll leave it there. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to recommend keeping the 2021 language for section 5071.3, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay. Old section 507.4 was moved into 507.1.6, but no change other than numbering. The same with performance testing. 507.6 went to 507.1.7.
These are all editorial changes without any.
Just numbering changes, not even editorial.
Oh, okay, I see. Yep, I understood.
So I don't know if you want to even address them as numbering changes.
I mean, if the language is the same, yeah,
Yeah, the language remained exactly the same and just the number changed.
gotcha.
Moving them into that general section. Uh, 507.2, type 1 hoods. The existing exception was moved into the general section 507.1, and then we had that state amendment for type 1 hoods that there was discussion during the review of existing amendments that someone might want to pursue a code change proposal to ensure that this wasn't exempting them from hoods entirely.
I think this was consistent with things that we talked about, that we looked at the last meeting. I will move that we recommend adoption of this change.
That's for 507.2, Ted.
Yes, 507.2.
Is there a second? And Krista, really my understanding is that this is just exception 1 got moved into 507.1 that we already looked at,
Right, this is,
but exception 2 is still remaining in 507.2.
right, except for it's now exception 1,
Right.
or just exception.
Is there a second to Ted's motion?
I'll second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending adopting just changes to section 507.2 based on model code changes? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And then 507.5.1 through 507.5.3. Those were all relocations, just numbering changes in without changes to the text at all. The same with 507.5, which was moved to 507.2.10. I guess that should be actually above the other ones, but my numbering skills weren't up to snuff on those. 509.1 was moved to 507.2.11, and minor editorial changes with a new title.
All right. Any discussion here? What was this one previously called?
I'll move that we recommend approval of 507.2.11.
Yeah, this was previously titled Where Required, so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it provides a specific code reference, so instead of where required, it's more clear.
right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of recommending adopting changes to 507.2.11, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 507.3. The struck sections were moved to 507.1 as part of exception 6. And some of 507.1 was moved in here since it pertains only to type 1 hoods used in lieu of a type 2.
I
Interesting.
move that we recommend adoption of 507.3. It seems consistent with the language we've been working through on similar issues all the way through here.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So motion is second. Any discussion here? I guess one maybe key thing to note here is that they've included the light duty cooking appliances into the requirements for a type 2 hood. Previously, it didn't have that specific reference. It just had appliances. All right,
Yeah, that just makes things clearer.
all right.
Just gonna
Any?
look,
Oh.
I was just gonna look up the
Definition of light duty. Let me look that up real quick.
Sure.
For some reason, but I think it, yeah, I mean, it does say it does not produce grease or smoke as a result of the cooking, process, although process was crossed out, but yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this? All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption to model code changes for section 507.3, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
New section 507.3.4. The states what the necessary exhaust capacity is needed for type 2 hoods. There's a similar section 507.2.10 for type 1, and they just duplicated it for type 2.
Got it. And yeah, I think this is since they've kind of indicated light duty for type 2. Now I think they've moved like the CFM per linear foot table on here. I see that as the next line item, noting the relocation. All right, any other discussion for this one? This makes sense.
I'll move we recommend approval of 507.3.4.
I'll second it.
All right, motion is second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of recommending adoption to the model code change for section 507.3.4, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
And then 507.5.4, 5.7.5.5 were both moved up to be subsections under that new section 507.3.4, but no changes beyond just the numbering.
Right.
508.1.1, makeup air temperature. Reworded to clarify how you design the system to handle the loads, whether or not you need a dedicated makeup air system.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite sections. It's always been super confusing the way it's written.
And then how to apply the 10-degree temperature difference.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't necessarily think the model code change solves the issues, but it maybe is a step in the right direction.
I'm going to move that we recommend adoption of this change. And by doing so, if there's a second, we can have discussion.
Is there a second? All right, we can't move on unless there's a second, or we'll have to move on to another section.
I apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties with equipment. I'll second for Ted.
All right, thank you. All right, motion second. All right, Ted, what you got?
So this appears to me to solve some of the problems that we were struggling with last week, where quite often with a class 1 hood, the makeup air is put into the kitchen immediately adjacent or even into the class 1 hood, or into its space certainly, so that there really is no mix between the general room air as handled by the HVAC system and the air going into and through the class 1 hood. So I think this change is, even though its language is not perfect, it basically eliminates the need for measuring that 10-degree difference if that makeup air is put right into the hood area and not having to come across the room. So if you measured the temperature on the other side of the room, it'd be whatever the set point on the HVAC system is.
Right, and you have the exception that they're exempting completely any air that's introduced directly to the hood itself.
Right.
Air
Exactly.
that's introduced into the kitchen space would. So I guess the exception might be is for a compensating hood, but it doesn't really specify if you have like a hood supply plenum or like something that's integrated with the hood itself. But yeah, I would agree. It's definitely helpful the way they've changed it. It could be improved a little bit maybe, but I think it's a good change. Any other discussion for this one? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending adoption for section 508.1.1?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, makeup air ducts and air balance were both just relocated and renumbered. And sections 510 through 514 were similarly just renumbered and unchanged based on the reorganization of section 507. Well, yeah, mostly 507.
All right.
Moving into chapter 6. Return air openings. Specifies that the return air in 2, 7, and 10, and both exceptions, only refers to that for heating or air conditioning systems. 2 additional items were added specific to return air from closets in an attempt to control moisture levels.
So a quick question on that is, how does that relate to ventilation? We see a lot of return air into the ERVs, potentially coming from the bathrooms or from the shower spas. So this excludes for heating and or air conditioning, but it doesn't necessarily exclude from ventilation. So we take from that ventilation is an acceptable location?
Well, to start with, your return air to an ERV is coming directly from outside. It's your exhaust air in the HRV that is going to the outside, being returned from the bathroom to the outside. It's not return air, it's exhaust air.
Okay, so you're qualifying return air as being outside air?
The return air is, well, in the case of an HRV, in the case of an HRV, you've got outside air coming into the house, and you've got return air going out of the house, and that return air can come from bathrooms or other places where you need to otherwise ventilate that room. So
really, it's not return air at all. It's exhaust and supply.
Exhaust air, exactly.
Exhaust and supply air, okay.
Yeah, exhaust and supply would be the right terms for that, and return air wouldn't actually be appropriate name for that.
Okay, so that makes more sense.
Yeah, one of the things interesting about this that needs to be considered while we're looking over this and understanding what it means is that we're used to, at least I'm used to thinking of closets as a place where we put our clothes. In commercial buildings, closets are often full of cleaning supplies and all kinds of other things that that can have a lot of noxious odors, VOCs, and whatever. So return air in this context is something to be taken seriously.
You can see where there would be some conflict here on the verbiage, though. And again, because you're using return air for heating or air conditioning, should not be taken from a swimming pool enclosure. So that's assuming when you say return air, it's going back through the devices. So for example, I certainly don't want a return air coming back through an ERV either. So return air is from a room back to the device. Exhaust air goes from the device to the outside. Supply air is outside to the device. Room air is the device to the room. It's just a little awkward.
Yeah, if we're defining return air that way, as opposed, with regard to HRVs or ERVs, as opposed to exhaust air, then we have a problem with this.
Because return air in a furnace is also cycling back into the heater box, right? To the heat box.
Yes.
You're returning from that room back to the furnace and then redistributing. So that's also considered return air from the room to
Yeah. From me, it looks like they're talking dedicated about the HVAC and not anything about the DOAS.
Okay. So
I mean, they
and I'm good with that.
specify
I just don't want it
as-
to be confused with ventilation because so they're talking about taking return air from a crawl through a direct connection to return side of the forced air. Bad. Transfer openings on the crawls shall not be prohibited. That's a transfer opening. Return air for heating shall not be taken from hazardous and sanitary. As long as we're only talking about, well, wait, return air openings for heating, ventilation, air conditions on 601.5.
Yeah,
So
it's
comply
right
with
at the
all of
top.
the. So we're loading all of that heating, ventilation, and air conditioning into 601.5.
So that first line makes this very troublesome when it comes to HRVs and ERVs.
Correct, for ventilation.
Down on the bottom it says exceptions for number 2 is dedicated, but outdoor air systems, but that top line does say ventilation, so.
Yeah, I was curious, right, when I first read it, why item number 2 referenced specifically air for for heating or air conditioning systems, and it left ventilation out. And yet the top line left ventilation in. And as we've talked about, ventilation with a HRV or ERV would have to meet all of those requirements, and it wouldn't.
It could be a bit onerous on some of that, right?
Is there any more down below that if you scroll down a little bit, Krista?
I see more exceptions, right?
There's
an exception
no
for-
more exception, and there's one, well, I guess there is one more for garages. Yeah, these 2 exceptions only apply to item 10, and then these 3 apply to the scoping paragraph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if we had an exception number 4 down there, accepting the whole thing to the scoping paragraph in the case of a HRV or ERV, we'd be where we need to be. Otherwise, I think we have some language problems.
I don't think that's return air though. Return air literally goes back to a system and then is conditioned and returns to the space, where an ERV, HRV just doesn't do that. It's either exhaust or it's supply. I don't think this applies to those technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, and then I think we noted before, like in the top like the top language for this 601.5, you scroll up again, Krista, like it does return air openings for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems.
Agreed, but if you have 100% outside air, you're not returning anything for the dedicated outdoor air system. You can have a ventilation system that blends air, but that's not an ERV or an HRV.
Right.
Because if, a standard commercial furnace is also a ventilation device. It's got an outside air component, but a dedicated outdoor device does not have a returning component. Unfortunately, this isn't defined return air in the code, so it's what you find in the dictionary, which is not very technical. So
Are we able to get a little bit more in depth with our recommendations for approval by saying something's effective? Requires approval of this requires a clear definition with regards to HRVs and ERVs.
So for this section, since we would, like we kind of discussed previously, like we can recommend not adopting the model code changes and using the language from previous code cycle, is my understanding. And then we could flag it as potentially needing a code change to either clarify a definition or clarify the section. But that wouldn't be necessarily, like the actual change wouldn't be necessarily part of the initial report unless we had the language that we wanted to use developed.
Perhaps they're with number 7, they're trying to be specific and not exclude ERVs.
That's my understanding of how this is.
Return air for heating or air conditioning systems is very specific. Should not be taken from bathroom, toilet, room. Whereas other items here could be applied to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. But they're adding the specificity of the of the systems in number 7. In which case, I feel good about that.
But number 7 only refers to number 7. It stands on its own. Like in number 2, you have, number 10, you have exceptions that all 3 of which or 2 of which, whatever, refer to number 10. And up at the top, it says, shall comply with all of the following. Yeah. So you can't just stand alone on number 7. You have to meet all of those other requirements.
Yeah, a bit of a circular statement there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ben, what are the limitations of what we could comment on with regards to
that? Yeah, so like I said, like my understanding is for the initial recommendations for the model code changes, we could recommend not adopting the changes. So the previous 2021 code language would be the recommendation of the tag. At that point, we could recommend adopting it as written for the model code changes, and like with either of those, we could also signify if it's a significant change, as well as if there's a code change proposal that would be recommended to follow in the near future.
In the past, I believe what would have been done was a recommendation to adopt the changes and then assign somebody to write a code change proposal to specify how this would apply to HRV, ERV systems.
So moved.
So, Ted, my understanding is you're recommending adopting the model code changes and also assigning someone the task of developing a code change proposal.
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Or aye.
Third. Okay, so motion a second. All right, any further discussion on this one for now? Anyone want to volunteer for either taking on the assignment or sharing the assignment? Okay, if not, I guess we'll need to assign someone that. Ted, I don't know if you want, would you like to be a part of that, or is there someone else that would like to throw their hat in?
Yeah, I've never done a code change proposal and I really don't have time to start right now.
Right. If not, we can leave it as something that we assign following the meeting and keep moving. So, I'll leave it there unless someone wants to speak up.
When would be the due date for that particular code change proposal?
So as Dustin mentioned earlier, the proposal period, which would be a 90-day window, would potentially open following the council meeting this Friday. So obviously, like that's the deadline to get proposals submitted, I believe.
Yeah, so pretty much 90 days from now.
Jonathan, have you ever written a code proposal?
Last code cycle, I got my toes wet a little bit, so to speak, but I did have help from great people. So I wouldn't mind doing this again as long as a couple of folks wouldn't mind chiming in and giving me some help with it.
I don't know about giving you help, but I'd like to be a part of it. I've never done one either. And this one seems pretty easy. Could we not just say excluding HRVs, it would be HRVS, heat recovery ventilation systems?
Well, I think I think there might be some more things to look at in terms of what this may be providing in terms of requirements for those systems, like taking return air through different spaces or occupancies and things like that. But I think that'll be part of the code change proposal process to investigate.
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
take
just
it
need a little bit
lightly.
of help because there's some personal issues that I'll be taking off sporadic time out the next 3 months. So I will need a little bit of help. It's medically related. I apologize. But yeah, what I mean with help is I can definitely write it. I don't have a ton of time to spend deep diving this all by myself, and I'm not a mechanical engineer or an expert in the commercial world. So I just want to make sure I'm not going to inadvertently do something stupid to the sections I don't work in.
Right. That's my challenge too.
So I just need someone who's familiar with the commercial or ag or industrial purposes that this would also hit, that has a little bit of experience, or maybe if they'd be willing to take a peek after it's written, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable. I just want to make sure I'm not affecting the zones that I just have zero expertise in.
That's fine. And I think, Jonathan, if you want to be the point of contact to help coordinate some of this, that'd be great. And then we can work offline. I can participate as well. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, perfect. And then, yep, assign it to me and we'll make sure it's taken care of 90 days from today, you said?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay, it will be done.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, any further discussion? All right. All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes for section 601.5 and indicating that we're going to have a group led by Ken to develop a code change proposal, please say aye.
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 Okay, 602.1 was split into a general section with 3 subsections, pretty much all editorial. There is an existing state amendment.
I'll move to recommend adoption of 6.2.1.1, 6.2.1.2, and 6.2.1.3.
All right. Is there a second?
second.
All right, so motion is second. Any discussion here?
Yeah, I did submit this as a errata item to ICC because they kept the fuel-fired appliances shall not be installed within a plenum, and then had that also as language in the new 602.1.3. So I think that was just a editorial error on their part for the first edition.
Got it. Okay, so I forgot if did we discuss this during the state amendments section, Krista? Either way.
We did. I don't remember that we had anything specific to say about it.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think it makes sense that we wouldn't need that language twice. All right. Okay. Any further discussion for this one? And just to be clear, like the strike through for the fuel fired appliances was, that's in the model code. They have it listed twice in that area, and then 602.1.3 as well. That's All right. All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes to section 602.1, including subsections, as well as the staff recommendation to strike the redundant language, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Six oh two point three was moved to 602.2.1, just to be a subsection of construction of plenums, but there was no language change, just the numbering change. Materials within plenums, it was renumbered, but it was also revised for clarity. And had material moved into 2 new subsections.
Would recommend adoption of 602.3 and its subsections down through 6.2.3.2.
I would second that, but I would caution that number 1 is in conflict with the energy code. But this is commercial, so I may be wrong here. I am not a commercial expert. I backtrack. I apologize. But it does say 1 to 2 family dwellings here, which is why I said, see, I knew I wasn't too crazy, just slightly crazy. It says plenums in 1 and 2 family dwellings, which is residential code. Residential code says you will not use plenums at all in it for delivering ductwork system, whether it's ventilation, heating, or cooling.
This could be like an R2 occupancy in a commercial building, of course.
But, this is talking about materials exposed within plenums, not the use of the plenum itself. And so you can have ducts, for example, within a plenum in a 1 and 2 family dwelling. You just can't use the plenum itself as a duct. So I don't think there's a conflict there.
Okay, so Jonathan, was that a second, I assume?
Yeah, I'll roll the second. Let's do
Okay,
it.
all right. All right, any other discussion for this one? All right, all those in favor of recommending adoption for model code changes to section 602.3, including subsections, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 602.3.6 adds electrical to the plumbing and mechanical products and plenums. And then prohibits them from being exposed within a plenum.
And Krista, have you, on the staff side, looked at any like alignment with NEC requirements or other similar requirements that might have already been existing?
Looking at the code change proposal at ICC, this was in alignment with the NEC. And this was just included in the mechanical code for convenience.
Okay. They had the same UL listing requirement.
I'm curious what the word discrete means here. Does anybody have a clue there? Is there a definition somewhere?
I don't think there's an official definition of it. I'm not sure when or if they've always been using that language.
When I think of discrete, I think of having my clothes on. So, but if I applied that definition, this would occur to, bare wires, for example, as not being discrete, whereas a jacketed wire would be discrete under that definition of discrete. But why is that word in there, and what does it mean?
According to Dr. Google, it says a discrete component can be defined as a single part of an electrical circuit with one dominant function. It can be, for example, a resistor, a capacitor, or a diode. Discrete electronic components can be passive or active, according to Dr. Google.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess I'll also note that there's a separate section for wiring further up in this 602.2. 602.3.3. Yeah.
So I wonder if the intentions are for like sensors and such, right? Single purpose, kind of a single diode. We see them a lot in indoor air quality or smoke detection. I wonder if that's the purpose for it, like single purpose, small little diode or some
Pressure
sort of sensor.
sensitive, for example. Yeah,
Right.
pressure switch.
Something
Yeah.
along those lines, so they can maintain at least some kind of observation on the plenum.
Yeah, I think that appears to be what's intended here. So, do we have a motion already on this one?
No.
I will move that we recommend adoption of 602.3.6 and 602.3.10.
Is discrete in the discrete electrical or plumbing, is that in the commercial code as a definition at all? Is that something that we should probably propose to be added, since how there is a term now?
I think it has always been there. I don't think it's a new term.
Okay, perfect.
So motion from Ted is for recommending adoption for model code changes to 602.3.6 as well as 602.3.10. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any additional discussion? I don't know if we look at 602.3.10 much. And this is, it looks like, Krista, this was moving language from previous 602.3.
Right, this was just, it was part of 602.3 that got moved into its own specific section for non-combustible materials.
Got it. Okay. All right. All right. Any other discussion for these two? None. All those in favor of recommending adoption model code changes to 603.3.6 and 602.3.10, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 604.3 added another except allowing an increased smoke develop index for coverings located outside of the ducts consistent with the IBC.
I'm just trying to
recommend adoption of these changes.
motion to recommend adoption. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Any discussion? I was just trying to parse through the difference between the main section requirement and the new exception. They're very similar. It's really not in a plenum. All right. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like it's aligning with IBC. Any other discussion for this one? All those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes for section 604.3, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
A new section 607.2.4 prohibits the installation of wiring and controls through dampers unless they're part of the air distribution system. And then there's the subsection that says you can't do it unless it's allowed by their listing.
right. And then, yeah, the section after this for not installing through fire smoke dampers or fire dampers.
So move that we recommend adoption of 607.2.4 and 607.2.4.1.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any other discussion here? I don't know. I think the exception language is a little bit ambiguous. I think it probably makes sense to allow it for sensors and other things that are needed within the duct, but I don't know if anyone's really doing this, but using the duct as like a pathway for your control system or something like that, which serves the air handling system, but really should be routed outside of the duct, because it would still be related to that same system. But,
Yeah, I got something on this. I'd probably tell you about 90% of the package units put it on for the last 30 years have at least 4 feet of wire coming through the return and up into the unit. So I would tell you on changeouts, that will be a cost impact.
do you think, Brad, that would be a cost impact as written? Because they are accepting the wiring if it's associated with the air distribution system to be installed within the duct.
Only 4 feet, right?
Okay, so you're saying typically more than 4 feet.
Yes.
Gotcha. I don't, yeah, and Krista, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a section for this requirement previously, right?
Perhaps we need to have another exception for existing systems. Because if in an existing system, for example, if you had some kind of pressure controls or something in the duct, the wire for which was run all the way in the duct, it can be pretty expensive to try to get in and move that when you're replacing equipment or something like that.
Yeah, that might be something to look at. So yeah, Ted, I don't know if you want to think about looking at an exception for that. And I guess we have a motion on the table for, or do we have a motion? I don't know.
I think I had made the motion for 607.2.4 and 607.2.4.1, and I think Laura seconded it, if I remember right.
That's correct.
Yeah, based on Brad's feedback, it does seem like it would make sense to flag it for a cost, significant cost change. Okay, but yeah, so yeah, I think if there's something we'd like to develop, yeah, there's a code change proposal we want to kind of get on the tracker or list for upcoming things that we want the tag to look at. Let's think about that. And otherwise, any other discussion for the motion on the table?
Yeah, I would accept the what you wrote over in the right-hand column about cost association was limited to 4 feet when change out possible exception for existing systems. I'd accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion. Laura, do you accept that also?
I was just, I'm curious how they came up with the 4 feet. Um, but yeah, I can second that amended motion.
All right. All right. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of recommending adopting the model code changes for 607.2.4 and 607.2.4.1 with the flag of significant change and opening up the opportunity for code change proposal, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, so 607.6.1. Rather than noting in occupancies other than groups I2 and I3 at the beginning, they now stuck that language into the exception. So it specifies that it does not apply to groups I1 or I2 and I3.
So basically the change is that the exceptions do not now apply to groups I2 and I3, but still apply to everything else.
Right, and then the main paragraph would now apply to groups I2 and I3.
I don't know, maybe a
So
question for.
They're only allowing a 4-inch duct, it seems, to penetrate the 3 levels. Is that how I'm reading this?
For the exception, and then the through penetration requirement is also allowing for 2 stories to be connected with a fire damper protected duct.
Right, but that is existing language.
Looking at the language of exception number 4, where it talks about hot gases sufficient to ignite cotton waste, this looks like they're really talking about dryer vent ducts.
Yeah, I think a typical application for that is where you have like a multifamily building with stacked residential units, and you have dryer exhaust going straight up to the roof through a couple floors above it.
Mm. And of course, it could be bath fans as well, but
Bathman's range hood exhaust. Correct.
well, range hood couldn't do a 4-inch. You'd have to find another way to do that.
Yeah, some are doing 4-inch. I've seen some 4-inch ones that go for it. But yeah, it's all right. And then I guess Laura or others on the code review side, I don't know. Have you seen the 2-floor through penetration approach used for I2 and I3?
I actually haven't seen a lot of that. And so, yeah, I haven't, primarily, we've been dealing primarily with R2s, high-rise R2 buildings. So for some reason, yeah, they're now applying, the exceptions still apply to I2 and I3, but the main section is now being applied to those those particular projects. So yeah, I'm not dealing with a lot of that.
That's interesting. I haven't looked at the building code changes. I'm trying to remember if there's actually a similar through penetration item in like chapter 7. I would hope it would be consistent with this.
I think it is. Let me just take a quick look. 712. Yeah, it looks like in the IBC, it read the same previously. I don't have the code changes for the IBC up, but it looks like it read the same in 2018. 2018 is what I have up right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2024 looks similar. Has pretty similar language. Okay. All right. Okay. Any other discussion here? I don't know if someone wants to make a motion. Yeah.
I'll move that we recommend adoption of 712.1.9.
This is 607.6.1.
I'm sorry, where are we? That's what's up on the. Oh, I see. That was the reference. Okay, I don't see the number that we're working on here.
Oh, it's like on the next. It's kind of.
Oh, it's
on
up
the next
above
page.
607.6.1. Okay, I got you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. All right. Motion second. Any further discussion here? All right. All those in favor of recommending adopting model code changes for section 607.6.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Getting into
That
chapter
brings us
9.
into chapter 9.
Do you want to take a quick break here?
Yeah, let's take a break.
11.
Sounds good.
All right. So reconvene at 11 a.m. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope. Maybe let's do a quick roll call just to check everyone's still online. Looks like we should still have quorum, but we good to just check in.
Okay, Ben O'Mara,
Here.
Justin Bargot,
Here.
Steve Hart, Dennis Goucher,
Here.
Ray Shipman, Laura Bloyd,
Here.
Shalice Desai, Ted Clifton,
Here.
Ken Nelson, Bill Muskowski, Steve Simpson, Brad McCutcheon,
Here.
Sandhu Harpreet,
Here.
sorry, Kevin Duell, Ali Boris,
Here.
Kevin Newell is here, sorry.
Thank you. Jonathan Jones,
I am here.
David Price. So we have 9. That is a quorum.
Okay, great. I see a couple of people that didn't respond, but they're looks like they're still on the call. So hopefully they'll.
Yeah, can we
join
hit
us.
the people who didn't respond?
Do it one more time. Steve Hart. Ken Nelson. Bill Masaki. I think that's all we had that was here earlier.
I am here. I couldn't figure out which mute button to use. So I just switched my truck. Sorry
Thank you.
about that.
Okay.
All right. So, and I see Shailesh is online as well.
Yes.
So you come off mute, Shailesh. Are you? Can't hear you though. All right. Looks like Shailesh might be online, but maybe he has some audio issues. All right. Okay. I think with that, let's keep going.
Okay, chapter 9, 907.1. They added in factory built cremation furnaces with a new UL standard for that and separated that from incinerators.
This is definitely outside of my area of expertise, but I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on this.
Well, I'll move for recommending the adoption of 907.1. It seems pretty straightforward, and just referring to specific UL listings.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Any other discussion for this one? Okay, all those in favor of recommending adoption for model code changes to section 907.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 912, the title was changed from infrared radiant heater to electric space heaters. And changed to permanently installed and changed the UL standard.
I'll move that we recommend adoption of 912.1, 912.2, and 912.3.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Then looks like Krista, you have flagged this one as potentially significant. Is it just due to the UL listing change as well as, I don't know, there's other considerations you were seeing?
Yeah, I don't remember why exactly I did this I think it was just the expansion from radiant heater to all electric space heaters, maybe.
Gotcha.
And it seems to have let anything that's not permanently installed, in other words, like a freestanding thing that you plug into the wall, is not covered by this. So it let certain types of electric heaters off the hook. This is only permanently installed.
But certainly if people don't think this is significant, we can remove that.
I don't really think it's significant, but that's just me.
Anyone else? Dad, I would assume you're wanting to flag this as non-significant. All right. Any other discussion for this one? All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption for model code changes to section 912, please say aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed?
Okay, next one, new requirement for just listed and labeled in accordance with UL 499.
I'll move that we recommend the adoption of the change to 931.1.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion here? All right. Hearing none. And Krista, it looks like you flagged this one too. Is it since
Just
this is
because it's regulating a new pieces of equipment that wasn't previously regulated.
Yep.
At least under this code.
all right? Any other discussion? All those in favor of recommending adoption of section 931, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, chapter 10. And then we do have a state amendment to this section, changing from state inspectors to state inspection programs to correlate with LNI's governance over boilers and pressure vessels. And then there is a new exception for pressure vessels regulated under Chapter 9.
I'll move that we recommend adoption of 10.101.1.
Is there a
A second.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Any discussion for this one? I thought we may have discussed this when we looked at the existing amendments as well. All right. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption of all good changes to section 1001.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, a new requirement for water heater pan in 2.4. There's some minor differences between this and the requirement in the UPC on the depth.
And do we know the 2024 UPC requirement yet?
I think it did not change, but I haven't double checked it.
Okay.
Way too far. Well, it looks like there was a significant change there.
This seems to cover different issues. The
Well, they both say they're for where water leakage may cause damage.
Yes, but the IAPMO language covers different issues related to it. For example, the drainage band depth, the size of the drain pipe. It doesn't address the gauge of the material that it's made out of, or the flame spread of what it's made out of. So it's covering different issues regarding that pan.
Yeah.
I don't see any conflicts, so if I haven't already done so, I'll recommend that we I'll move that we recommend adoption of 1002.4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Yes, I was. Okay, and yeah, so I was just looking at the UPC, which doesn't pertain to our state, but it does look like it has similar requirements for materials in it. It doesn't specify the depth of the, or the, excuse me, I was looking at the IPC. But, I'm wondering why they have it. I guess it's for both codes, but all right. All right. Any other discussion for this one? All those in favor of recommending adopting auto code changes to section 1002.4, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 1006.6. Part of this is the whole language change for switching to not more than. And see. Thirteen is changed to a general material complying with 1202 rather than ASME standards. And if the discharge termination is not readily visible, it needs to have an alarm notification.
I'll move we recommend adoption of 1006.6.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend adoption. Any discussion? I guess I'm curious if anyone's aware of the requirement to add the leak detection monitoring device with alarm notification would be a significant adder.
I think it's a significant option that is being allowed in the case where it's impractical or sometimes impossible to have that discharge at a place where it can be readily visible. So I think it's good that we have an option in the code now to provide another means of monitoring.
Any other input here? All those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes to 1006.6, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, and that brings us into refrigeration.
And I know, Laura, I don't know if you had a chance to go through this in much detail. I know you're thinking about taking a look at it ahead of time. I don't know if there's anything you want to indicate before we started going through these various sections. There's a lot of changes overall for chapter 11. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention.
I actually haven't been able to study it like I had hoped. But yeah, looks like it is pretty substantial.
And yeah, a lot of it's taking a lot of the ASHRAE 15 changes and updates that have been implemented for the higher flammability refrigerants and incorporating them into the code, which is good to allow for these types of systems to have some sort of requirements around them to provide a pathway to use them, in my opinion. But there's just a lot of changes that have been introduced with that as well.
So I assume that ASHRAE 15 is discussing the new refrigerants that have been required by the EPA.
Yeah, I mean, ASHRAE 15 has been the refrigeration standard for a while, and it's been recently updated to incorporate requirements for A2L A2 and A3 refrigerants in more detail than previously.
So I will move, we recommend adoption of 1101.1.1.
All right. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion for section 1101.1? All those in favor of recommending adoption for section 1101.1, please say aye.
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 Okay, the next one is mostly editorial. They add the reference to IIAR CO2 systems for CO2 systems and referencing the fire code requirements in addition to ASHRAE 15.
I'll recommend or move that we recommend adoption of the changes to 1101.1.1.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion for this one? All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption to model code changes for 1101.1.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 1101.1.2 for ammonia refrigerants. Basically just editorial and adding a reference to IIAR 6.
I'll move that we recommend adoption of 1101.1.2.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion for this section? All those in favor of recommending adopting model code changes to section 1101.1.2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, on table 1101.2, they just removed the UL standard reference for refrigeration fittings as redundant to the requirements in 1107. And if anybody would like to, I can pull up the table so you can look at it. I just didn't include the whole thing.
So I will move that we recommend adoption of 1101.2.1. Reason being that this is not really something we have a choice about. These are the refrigerants that are coming down as a result of US EPA action, and they have to be adopted by the first of the year, whether we like it or not.
Right. And there's a second for that. I guess I don't know, Chris, if we need to, if you wanted us to.
Well, did you want to address the table at all before going to the next one, or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So maybe, I don't know, Ted, if you want to, maybe you could include the table 1101.2.
Okay, I guess we haven't seen the table, so if we're going to include the table, we need to see it.
Yeah, I want to look at the table.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up here.
And if anyone wants to like look at this on their own side, like this is all published already by the IACC, for the model code at least. So the full language is available there.
Seem to be stuck in chapter 12.
Right. And I guess like if you're looking at the 2021 table,
And I'm trying to find the
and
code
I see
change.
a hand up, Harshad. See your
Hi.
hand up in the audience.
Yeah, my name is Harshad Inamdar. I'm a research engineer with Ream Manufacturing. Yeah, I think that's yeah, the only problem was that the reference to UL 207 was included here, but it really applies to fittings, and yeah, therefore Ashray had proposed to delete that rule
Yeah, and that
in the previous code cycle, yeah. And it's referenced, yeah, in section 1107.5, so that which applies to pipe fittings. So that's the appropriate location to reference UL 7.
great. Yeah, thank you for the background on that.
Yeah, so I'm fine with including this table with the motion to recommend approval.
Is there a second for Ted's motion?
I'll second.
All right, so the motion is to recommend adoption for model code changes to table 1101.2 that we're seeing, and then also for the new section 1101.2.1 for group A2L, A2, A3, and B1 high probability equipment. This definitely qualifies as impactful. All right, any discussion for either of these items? I guess one thing that I've noticed is that ASHRAE 15 provides definitions for high probability equipment, but it's not included in the IMC language. So it does require you to reference ASHRAE 15 to determine if your equipment is high probability. Is one maybe not as user friendly thing for some of these changes. But I think that could be clarified. There's some potential proposals that I'm sure there's definitely going to be some proposals around these changes as far as I know. But No objections on my side to the model code language. All right. Anyone else have any thoughts for this section or these two items? Harshad, good.
Yeah, this is Harshadin. I'm a research engineer with remanufacturing. The only context I can add is when EPA approved the use of Group A2L, A2, A3 refrigerants through SNAP. So that's the significant new alternatives policy program through SNAP Final Rules 23, 25, and then the recently published SNAP Final Rule 26 for commercial refrigeration equipment. These UL standards are explicitly referenced by EPA in the SNAP approvals. So equipment must comply with like 484 or 2-40 or 2-89 if we are to use Group A2 A2, A3 refrigerants in like the respective application categories. Yes, so, I mean, we have to comply with EPA's final rule, and yet this is the only way to do it.
Yep. So thank you for again for that context. And yeah, this will also align with some of the Washington State Department of Ecology requirements for some of these same requirements for A2L and low GWP refrigerants. All right. Any other discussion here? There's definitely more refrigeration stuff that we'll go through. All right. All those in favor of recommending adoption for all of the changes to table 1101.2 and section 1101.2.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 1101.6, they just removed mechanical from the mechanical refrigeration to say that all refrigeration systems need maintenance.
I'll move a recommend adoption of 1101.6.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any other discussion for this one? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending adoption to section 1101.6, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, 1101.7. This was pretty extensively revised to be consistent with ASHRAE 15 on changing refrigerants.
I'll move for recommending adoption of 1101.7. And just some, well, I'll wait for a second and then I have some comments.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Dan.
My comment is that I understand it will be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to actually convert existing equipment over to the new refrigerant type because of, well, for one thing, they fall into a different safety group classification. So there's a lot of additional requirements for the equipment itself to be able to handle the new refrigerant. So this does appear that it would allow for that to happen if the manufacturers make all the right parts and pieces and add-ons. So it's as good as we can do for now, but it may need some additional changes within the next couple of years, or maybe in the next code cycle, just to keep up with technology.
Sure. Yeah, who knows? Maybe in the future there might be some kind of universal replacement refrigerants or something that are easier to implement. I guess I had a question to put out there. The existing previous requirement was requiring notification to code official, I believe. But I guess maybe that's just another group refrigerant, maybe.
So I got some comments on this one.
Brad.
So this is a big one for a company like mine. That there is still a ton of R22 equipment out there that is being converted to 407C, MO99, and the fact that there's no limitation on the poundage is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And I guess you like, so when you say like there's having no limitation, you see that as a potential issue where there could be a lot more replacement activity that could be allowed for with the code change?
In a way, yeah, it could be good for my company, but it's going to drive cost, yes, because there's not a lot of manufacturers that are going to give you written permission to change the refrigerant it was designed with, because then they take responsibility. So you're going to get that's what it was designed with. You have to redo it with that. There's just a lot around this that it's going to drive changes, which actually could be good for my company, but not necessarily. It is going to be a cost impact to people. So there is just, I think we're just thinking about the future refrigerants here and not thinking about what's actually out there right now.
Gotcha. Okay, and yeah, I think we have it flagged as a significant change here, so definitely in line with that.
Brad, could you elaborate a little bit? You said that eliminating the poundage requirement was concerning in some way. Does that just have relationship to the written instructions of original equipment manufacturer, or is that related to where a registered design professional could specify that, or just elaborate a little bit on that poundage issue?
It just brings every system into play, all the way from residential to like commercial. If you were doing a system with 220 pounds, which is a fairly decent sized system, you know, that's probably 5% of the refrigeration work that's out there, maybe 10%. You know, so bringing that down is basically bringing every refrigeration system into play.
Right, so it's previously, unless you exceeded that 220 pounds, it wasn't triggering this section for notifying code official or other requirements. But yeah, like Brad said, now that there's no limitation or like threshold, it would apply to any system where you're changing refrigerants.
Is there something in the word that came down from EPA that would require us to eliminate that 220 pound limit, or what's the What's the logic behind eliminating that limit and going with everything else here?
And Harshad, maybe I don't know if you're responding to that comment or
Thank
if
you.
had some
My
more.
name is Harshad Inamdar. I'm a research engineer with Remanufacturing. I'm also a voting member of ASHRAE 15. So I can provide a bit more context. So this change is harmonized with the 2022 edition of ASHRAE 15. Right, so the ASHRAE 15 committee itself submitted this code change to the IMC. The reason to submit this code change proposal was that the existing text was kind of vague, and so the more prescriptive requirements were thought to be appropriate, especially when changing the safety designation. So changing from, like, let's say group A1 to group A2L, or changing a safety designation. Then the question on the EPA, whether this change is made to align with EPA regulations. So the SNAP approval from EPA, it's restricted to new equipment. So Group A12 refrigerants can only be used in new equipment that's specifically designed for that safety class of refrigerant. And so retrofits of this kind for a lot of the residential, light commercial air conditioning systems, and even some of the, like, let's say, reach-in coolers, retail food refrigeration, it really isn't approved by EPA, so it would be difficult. Yeah, retrofits may be possible for sort of larger supermarket refrigeration systems. So for a lot of the, like, mass produced equipment that is not, like, specified and designed or built on site, such retrofits aren't approved by EPA, at least right now. And
So
yeah,
is this all, sorry to hop in, but is this all designed around newer equipment then? So this is not pertaining to any older equipment?
that is probably correct. I mean, it's this rewrite is more with a view to the upcoming transition for the HVAC and refrigeration industry. So the transition to low GWP refrigerants, which are often group A12 or A2 or A3.
But this whole section is talking about when you're changing refrigerants, and that would seem to indicate that they're talking about existing equipment that, for some reason, if the old refrigerant is no longer available, that you would need to change to a different refrigerant.
I mean,
Yes,
you are
and
correct.
you,
Yeah. Sorry, Brad, go on.
yeah, and I was just gonna say, then you couldn't change to a blended refrigerant that would work in it, saving the cost of a change out, basically.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, I will say sort of ASHRAE 15 takes a more agnostic. I mean, ASHRAE 15 tries to, in the SBCC 15, I mean, the committee that writes and maintains ASHRAE 15, it takes a more holistic approach, right? So it's a safety focused, it's a safety code, and therefore the requirements aren't particularly tailored to, like, restrictions from EPA or so on, right? It sort of tries to take a more comprehensive approach that if a refrigerant is being changed, this is the procedure to be followed, because that is appropriate and that is safe to both, I mean, to the installer, to the occupants.
So would you
So
say a lot of the
it's
language, I'm sorry, sir, would you say the lot of the language you see here mirrors that of the EPA's guidance and their rule set?
no, actually, yeah. So that's what I was saying, is that this is yeah, this isn't like exactly harmonized with EPA's requirements. So EPA's SNAP approvals right now require or only approve the use of Group A12 refrigerant in new equipment. So the EPA's SNAP approvals don't allow sort of field retrofits that this section is talking about. But ASHRAE 15 is developed, yeah, like in a more holistic or comprehensive manner to the sort of safety first. So it doesn't limit its scope to like only what EPA allows. For example, I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but it's like that this section is written because that is the safe and appropriate way to change refrigerant. If EPA doesn't allow it, then EPA is the more restrictive requirement, and therefore we follow, I mean, both we follow EPA's restrictions and we follow ASHRAE 15.
To me, it's putting the cart before the horse because we're still 5 years from having to change, 5 to 10 years from having to change any of the new refrigerants that will be released in January.
Well, this isn't requiring that you change. It just says if you do change, this is how you do it.
It's also requiring any older refrigerants too, which would then have to update the system to a brand new system.
Well, this doesn't require anything to be done. It's just if you do something, this is what you have to do. The requirements for change out would come from the EPA or would come from replacement of old equipment or would come from Department of Ecology for Washington State. But this doesn't require you to, this doesn't trigger anything.
But if you can't get the refrigerant to put in it, then, or can't get approval, then that triggers it.
One of the questions that was brought up at the National Association of Home Builders recently is what happens when there's no longer these older refrigerants available? And the answer to that was rather interesting. It was that every one of these older systems that has to be replaced, all that refrigerant gets captured and saved and can then be reused. So there will actually, by these estimations that I heard, there will be a ready supply at relatively low cost of these older refrigerants for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what more to say, but I mean, it is what it is. I know it's coming. I'm just saying that there's gonna be I mean, as this is written, there's a cost impact, so. And it's gonna lead towards changing out equipment that may be fixable, at a lower impact to people, so.
And yeah, I think Brad, thanks for just flagging that and getting that perspective, because I think it's important to make sure that's known and we have it flagged for the report, just given that it's likely to affect a lot of activities going on in the industry. So appreciate that. I don't know if we want to look at any other action at this time, but if we have a motion to recommend adopting this on the table. So if there's any further immediate discussion, let me know, but otherwise just gonna move on to voting on it. So hearing none, motion is to recommend adopting model code changes to section 1101.7. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so Brad on there for the record, but yeah, thank you.
Okay, next section, 1102.2.1 is on mixed refrigerants. And again, this is based on ASHRAE 15 requirements.
So I'll move, we recommend adoption of 1102.2.1.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any discussion for this section? Looks like it's allowing for a couple options or an option for mixed refrigerants. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending adoption of model code changes for section 1102.2.1.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And sorry, Chris, I noticed that you have this flagged as potentially significant.
Yeah, not necessarily associated with cost, just a different procedure.
Yeah, I know it seems like it's allowing for something that hasn't been provided before, except by that exception. Okay, but yeah, I don't have any other comments, but
Certainly we can remove the designation if the tag wishes, but
yeah, I don't know if anyone sees any reason to keep a significant designation on this, if it's a significant change one way or another in terms of cost.
yes, no. Anyone?
I think it allows a possibility that wasn't there before. And while it's not a negative cost increase issue, I think it is kind of significant because it allows for some possibilities as the chemistry develops and the various manufacturing groups find ways to work with things that we can't work with today. It makes it available. So whether that's considered significant or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and even the previous exception seemed to be a little bit more narrowly defined than what is in the new language, except for the requirement for staying within the same safety group. All right. Okay, so I think we went through that. But
Okay, the next one. We're looking at updates to the table with new refrigerants.
this is like 6 pages of table.
Yep. So you can see there's
They've actually added a new column too, right? For LFL. All right. Anyone have any items to discuss for the table?
I had no idea there were that many ways to get cold.
If we're making people hot too. We're making things
Our
hot.
June weather is doing it enough, right?
All right. Any discussion for the table? Obviously, this is really just taking new information, adding and adjusting some items.
See, we need to scroll back up just a little bit more.
No, this is where we are.
That's
The
where we are.
table 1103.1.
Oh, that's the table. But we had a motion on the floor up above that.
But we already voted that motion, didn't we?
And I need to keep going up. There's a couple that you've shown now that haven't even brought up yet.
The one above that's for the replacement.
Right, that was the last one we dealt with.
No, we did the mixing.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
And you made the motion.
Mixing with what was still, yeah, the motion had been made, but it hadn't been voted on yet, I don't think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have.
Carried, no opposing.
Okay. Yeah, I thought we had gone to the table without having done that. So do you need a motion to accept the changes to the table?
Yes.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion second. Any discussion on the table items? There's obviously a lot of changes, but it's gonna probably be what it is. I'm hearing none. All those in favor of recommending accepting changes to table 1103.1, please say aye.
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 Okay, so we are right at time. So I think we still have a little bit more to go, especially in chapter 11 and a couple more items after that. So we'll probably need another at least 2-hour meeting to close those out. And so it's likely going to happen after Friday. So I don't know if anyone has any objections to looking at scheduling something next week, but that would be my recommendation.
So I will not be available Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday next week.
Any other thoughts?
I will not be available Wednesday.
Thursday or Friday should work for me.
Okay. So it seems like there's some momentum between Thursday and Friday next week. So try to find a time for one of those days that works. Great. If nothing else, thanks everyone again for your time in going through this. We're almost there, but appreciate everyone's efforts and input today. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Good work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.